If you've spent the last few evenings scrolling through endless spec sheets, watching YouTubers compare frame rates, and still feel stuck wondering whether the next gaming rig you buy will actually let you play the titles you love without breaking the bank, this review is here to clear that up. I've been talking to a handful of folks who were on the fence between a DIY build and a pre-built, and the biggest fear that kept coming up was the classic, what if I spend a lot of money and end up with something that can't handle the games I care about? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through why the Skytech Gaming King 95 might be the answer for some, and why it could be a miss for others. First off, the King 95 is aimed squarely at the plug-and-play gamer who wants high-end performance without having to hunt down each component, solder cables, or troubleshoot BIOS updates. The heart of the machine is an AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D, a chip that's been praised for its huge 3DV cache, which translates into smoother performance in titles that lean heavily on CPU cache, like Cyberpunk 2077 or Microsoft Flight Simulator. Pair that with an AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT with 16GB of GDDR6, and you're looking at a GPU that sits comfortably in the upper mid-tier of today's market, good enough for 1440p high settings and even decent 4K in less demanding games. That combination is the core reason many people feel the rig offers real value. You're getting a pugpoo pair that, on paper, should let you hit 60+ FPS in most modern releases without having to overclock or upgrade in the next 6 months. But specs only tell half the story. What really matters is how the PC behaves once you fire it up in a typical living room setup. I spent a weekend running a mix of games from fast-paced shooters like Valorant to texture-heavy open-world adventures such as Elden Ring. In the shooter, the 3DV cache showed its strength, input lag felt negligible, and frame pacing stayed consistent even when I toggled between 1080p and 1440p on the fly. In the open-world titles, the 2TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD shined, load times were almost instantaneous, and the system never stuttered during large-scale environment streaming. The 32GB of DDR5 6000 RAM also gave a noticeable boost when I ran a background recording software while streaming on Twitch. There were no hiccups, and the AIO liquid cooler kept the CPU temps under 70°C even after an hour of sustained battle in Red Dead Redemption 2. For a pre-built, that level of thermal performance feels surprisingly solid, especially given that the cooler is a 360mm ARGB unit that's not just for looks, it actually spreads heat evenly, reducing the need for aggressive fan curves. Now let's talk about the practical downsides that you'll notice once the box is open. The first is connectivity. The system ships with Wi-Fi 5, 802.11 AC, rather than the newer Wi-Fi 6 standard. If your house already has a Wi-Fi 6 router, you'll still get decent speeds, but you won't be able to max out the bandwidth that a newer card could offer, something to keep in mind if you stream in 1080p at 60 frames per second and want a rock-solid uplink. Second, the graphics output is limited to a single HDMI and a single DisplayPort. That's fine if you're using one monitor, but anyone looking to run a dual-monitor setup for gaming and productivity will need a splitter or a dock, adding a small extra cost. Third, while the no bloatware claim holds true for the most part, the PC does come with Windows 11 Home pre-installed, which means you'll still have the usual Microsoft accounts and occasional forced updates that can interrupt a gaming session if you're not careful with active hours. Who should consider buying the Skytech Gaming King 95? If you're a gamer who wants to dive straight into 1440p gaming without fiddling with BIOS settings, and you value a clean, quiet system that can handle streaming and multitasking, this rig checks a lot of boxes. It's also a good fit for students or young professionals who need a capable workstation for both work and play thanks to the ample RAM and fast SSD. Compiling code, editing video, or running virtual machines won't feel like an afterthought. On the other side, if you're the kind of user who already has a high-end GPU from a previous build, or you're hunting for the absolute maximum performance at 4K and are comfortable assembling a PC yourself, the King 95 might feel a bit underpowered for the price. Likewise, power users who demand Wi-Fi 6, multiple monitor outputs, or a higher wattage PSU for future upgrades may find the 850W Gold unit generous now but limiting later if they plan to add additional storage or a more demanding graphics card. From a value standpoint, the price point sits in a sweet spot when you compare it to building a similar spec yourself. If you add up the cost of a comparable Ryzen 7 9800X3D, a 16GB RX 9070 XT, a 2TB Gen 4 SSD, DDR5 RAM, a quality AIO cooler, and a reliable 850W PSU, you're often looking at a build that's $200-$300 higher than the Skytech price tag. The pre-built